Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, I am not wearing a vest. I have permission from our guest. She said she's not offended that I didn't wear a vest. It's okay that I'm just wearing a tie. Thank you, Professor. Uh, so, this is part of our continuing series where we talk to professors, scholars, reporters, writers, columnists, activists, anybody on the left, anybody on the right. We don't care. We want to make sure you have thoughtful perspectives and provide it directly to you, the public, so that you could do this thing that was popular back when I was in high school. It's called thinking for yourself. Maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. We're not sure. With us today is Professor Jeanna Matthews. She's a professor at Clarkson University. She was also an affiliate at the Data and Society Research Institute in New York, USA, America. And she's worked at, I believe, at the University of Chicago, Clarkson University, the Intel Corporation, and also University of California, Berkeley. Some of her work includes trustworthy evidence for trustworthy technology, an overview of evidence for assessing the trustworthiness of autonomous and intelligent systems, gender bias and underrepresentation in natural language processing across human languages, how fake accounts constantly manipulate what you see on social media and what you can do about it. A couple interviews related to that, and right to content your confront your accusers, opening the black box of forensic DNA software. This was the article that I found, the professor, political polarization and platform migration, a study of Parler and Twitter usage by United States of America Congress members. And we'll get to that in a minute. But first, Professor, did I get anything wrong with your bio? Is there something we need to add?
You didn't get anything wrong, but that ACM Digital Library link that says I worked at the University of Chicago, that's just not correct. I'm not sure how that got there. But
did not work at Univ of Chicago.
There must be someone with a similar name.
Well, we'll correct it. We didn't. Is there anything other than that we got wrong, or that you'd like to say about your background?
No, okay. That's all fine.
When did this white paper come out, and why did you write it? Why did you think this was a good idea? What was going on in America? And as I always say, before you answer, please answer as both an academic and as an American with two working eyeballs, pretending you're speaking to someone who's been in a cave for 10 years. What's going on? Why is this a worthwhile topic? Why'd you bother to write white papers? Is there a problem with social media and political polarization?
So this paper came out in early 2021, but it was work that we had started to do in the middle of 2020. We were interested in people leaving major platforms, so leaving Twitter to go to Parler, or especially movements to encourage people to get their news other places, or to interact on different platforms. And the movement from Twitter to Parler, I think, was one of the largest scale movements that had happened off of a platform. And we were interested in kind of watching that in real time. So we had been watching that kind of mid 2020 and ended up watching it all the way through the end of the year and into the beginning of January. So we were watching it during like the January 6th time period. So it was a very interesting time to be watching all of those events.
So correct me if I'm wrong, roughly what happened was Donald Trump's using Twitter a lot. He loves it. He gets really popular. Somewhere along the lines, he can't use it anymore. People on the right feel that they are censored on Twitter or something, and then they migrate to Parler. Is that roughly what happened?
Yeah, that's definitely definitely a chunk of it. I think there was dissatisfaction with the content moderation policies of large platforms from multiple directions. I think on on the right, yes, there was discontent about, you know, anti-vaccine kind of stuff, posts. There was discontent about. There was certainly planning going on. For example, on Parler in the lead up to January 6th. That was a very kind of interesting. But back to the kind of content moderation stuff, there was just discontent about content moderation policies, and so you get groups of people who say, we can't get this platforms to do what we want. We're going to make our own little world over here. Come and join us. Don't participate in Twitter anymore.
So, if I may, let me read the summary of this study. Growing dissatisfaction with platform governance decisions at major social media platforms like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram has led to a number of substantial efforts originating both on the political right and the political left to shift to new platforms. In this paper, we examined one of the most impactful of these platform migration efforts, a recent effort primarily on the political right to shift from Twitter to Parler in response to Twitter's increased efforts to flag misinformation in the lead up to the 2020 election in the US. As a case study, we analyzed the usage of Parler by all members of the United States Congress and compared that to their usage of Twitter. Specifically, Parler was linked to January 6th. So, wow, there's a lot to process there. People were wanting to share their version of information on the upcoming election. Twitter said that's biased. You can't do that here. They moved to Parler. And although it was a minority of the amount of action that was originally on Twitter, it was substantial enough to help with the planning of January 6th or the orchestration of January 6th. Is that a fair summary?
I think so, yeah.
What about, have you heard of the Twitter files?
I don't know what you mean by the Twitter
files. So the Twitter company was recently acquired by Elon Musk.
Oh, yes.
And it was very controversial. And I'm not endorsing his management of the company as of late. I am pointing out, though, that journalists have pointed out this was accurate. He released information when he got into Twitter showing that the federal government was directing Twitter employees to do content moderation, exactly what conservatives had accused them of. And we're told that, you know, that's just crazy and you're mad. Then it comes out, actually, here's the actual emails proving it. So how much does social media platforms have to do with our intense political polarization? You're looking at Parler. It has to do with the planning of January 6th. When I talk to people, January 6th was, I want to say this correctly, I'm not happy January 6th happened at all. People lost their lives. It scared the hell out of people. But I do find some sort of resolution because people were debating if polarization was really bad, if it's really an issue. No one debates if polarization is bad or an issue after January 6th. At least we've had some sort of conscious awareness as a nation, I think, that it's bad. There's a problem. Because I was watching documentaries by political science professors up in 2020, the year before January 6th, going, we'll get over it. People will come together and kumbaya. And I'm like, I don't think so. That at least is gone now. At least we recognize we're in a bad spot and we're not going to just have some kumbaya moment and get out of this. That resolution of clarity and thought is one thing there was at least a silver cloud there, although I would never wish that event to happen. How politically polarized are we on social media? Is it social media that makes us polarized? Is it just us? This is a classic question. Yeah. Is it the social media machines making us this way, or were we already this way? Is it all social media's fault? We just get rid of social media, everybody starts being nice to each other? Does that make sense to you?
No, I don't think it's all just social media. Okay. But I think there are things on social media that are feeding into it. And in some cases, what's happening on social media is a symptom of what's going on. So one of the things that I think happens on social media that doesn't happen in polarization, that happens in the real world. I know you've talked about polarization that occurs because people choose where they want to go live and they kind of self-select into communities in real life. One thing that happens on social media that doesn't happen in real life is that in real life, you have one mouth and body and one set of ears. You take that mouth where you want, you say what you want, and it's attached to the body it goes along with. So people can immediately see the context around what you say. And it limits the amount of amplification. On social media, I might not just get my own opinion. Here's another thing I could do. I could create a bot on the other side of an issue. And I make that bot on the other side say ridiculous, extreme things that try to drive people away from the opinion that's not mine. So now I don't just have my mouth and body, I have a fake mouth and body on the other side, making the other side look ridiculous, right? Oh, here's another thing I can do. I don't just get my one mouth and body, I get 10,000 bots to like say, oh yeah, Jeanna, yeah, go. You said exactly what we wanted you to say. And it's this shadow army behind me making it look like, what I said was like encouraged by a bunch of people.
Right. Well, everybody agrees with me.
And another thing is that the remoteness of any online experience makes people more willing to be, mean and mocking generally than they would be in person to someone's face. So I think all those aspects are all things that online environment, social media brings to the table that are different and amplifying, concerning, that you don't just get from polarization in the real world.
Since you've seen some of the videos I've done, and I'm quoting theories by different professors, and I have my own opinion. I'm not giving it out yet, but can I play devil's advocate with you, Professor, since you're very well informed about this. So I appreciate you being willing to do some sort of, creative thought questions. I have a magic wand. Mm-hmm. Poof! All social media companies are gone. America comes back together. Everything's fine. We just stop being, tomorrow, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, all of them are wiped out. You can't go on that. You still have the internet, but all social media companies are gone. We rewind the clock basically 5 to 7 years. You still have the internet, but the popularization of social media is gone. We calm down. Everybody starts being nice to each other. People stop being mean to each other. Division politically starts to immediately calm down.
No, I don't believe that that's true.
Because that's what a lot of experts are saying. Poof! Social media gone. Humpty Dumpty comes back together. Why is that not accurate, Professor?
I think there is something to do with the way people choose to self-separate in other ways as well, whether it's moving to be in a location with other people who are like-minded with you, whether it is, just the television channel, online social media is one kind of media. There's also, you can watch whatever channel you want. You can listen to get whatever newspaper you want. So there's other sources of getting kind of a filter bubble than just social media. But social media has some especially worrying properties that I think has added gasoline to the fire. So if you took social media completely out of the picture, I think it might help, but I don't think it's a silver bullet in any way, shape, or form.
There will still be other ways for people to differentiate themselves. They're already sorting into separate communities. And one of my favorite ones is that people say, oh, if we, social media is polarizing us. I went back and looked up the Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky scandal. And that was national news and had people rabid. That all got started by an internet website called the Drudge Report. So that was, they didn't even have social media, but they had the Drudge Report on the internet, and that managed to get people massively divided. This is 15 years, 20 years before social media pops up. And it was just as bad. And it was because there was this thing called the internet that connected everybody across America. So I'm like, I see people say, oh, get rid of social media. Everything snaps back together. And I go, well, then Bill Clinton never would have faced an impeachment trial because it wouldn't have blown up, right? Because we didn't have social media back then. That's not true. We had the internet and things were just as polarized.
So it's interesting. I do like computer security things. And many times in the computer security environment, I'll ask myself the common sense question, like, you only have to make it as, how do I make it as secure as the real world? Maybe you don't have to make it more secure. So
sure.
like if you were willing to give your credit card to a waiter or waitress and they go off with it and bad things could happen. And, you know, if online isn't any less secure than that, maybe that's enough. You don't have to make it perfect. And many times in computer security, that common sense type of question leads to good answers for me, because I think there are things in the real world that are working. In our media landscape, when I try to ask that same question, I really come down to it was never really working well. We used to have a media landscape that was much more tightly controlled. So there was a lot of voices that were not getting represented. That was a problem. Now we have so many voices, we don't know what to do with. Here's another computer security term for you. I don't know if you or your listeners know the term denial of service attack. A denial of service attack is where you just send so many queries at a website, it takes it down. And I think that's kind of what's happening to our attention these days. We get so many claims.
Oh,
I know how to debunk any one of them, say, but I don't have the time. It's just too many voices, too much stuff to pay attention to. And that's a problem. And then also, fundamentally, debunking something is about deciding who you believe. Because there are such things as facts in the world. These things happened at this date and time. There are also things that are opinions. So this is one place to start, is just knowing the difference between an opinion and a fact. Some things are opinions, some things are facts. But even for things that are facts, we don't personally experience most of them. We don't have the time. Clearly we're not present everywhere. So even if it was possible to have experienced it, you didn't do it. So now you are fundamentally asking, who do I believe? Who am I willing to believe? And when you have so many voices telling you completely opposite things, we used to, this is like a spectrum. I think we used to have a very controlled set of presentation of facts. People would have different opinions about those facts, but we had some shared facts to start with. Now, not only do we have different opinions, we have different facts, but it goes even deeper than that. We don't just have different facts, we have different fact checking. We don't even
thank you.
We don't even agree what it would take to establish something as a fact. And here it gets even deeper than that. So turn the dial on all the hard things. We don't even have a shared square in which we discuss the facts anymore. These, some people discuss this set of facts and these set of opinions and this set of fact checking over here, and other people discuss in a completely different place these others, and then we are forced together in some real life situations at the polls, and we think, wait a minute, I'm living in a completely different world than you are. And you have to ask, is it possible for democratic institutions to survive in an environment we don't even have a public square? We don't talk in the same places, and we don't have an agreed upon way of deciding what are the facts.
And that's really sad because I'm 46. I remember being in college when the internet was really becoming popular. And what you're saying is the opposite of what they told us. They told us everybody's going to have the same information. It'll bring everybody together. It'll be this commons that everybody can join if you're in the Appalachian Mountains or in downtown Seattle. And people are going to become better informed because they'll have more access to information. And it seems to be the opposite of everything I was promised about what the internet was going to do. Like, it could do those things, but instead of having everybody join one common, it's now 50 billion commons. And instead of everybody has access to the same information, and so we have a greater conversation, we have access to 50 different pools of information, and we can't agree. It's the opposite of everything I was promised in the 1990s the internet was going to be. My question to you as a expert with computers and data. How do we fix this? We can't get rid of the internet. It's not going to go away.
Mhm.
So this is what I keep coming back to: is we get rid of social media companies and everything is better? Like, Professor, how do you save America? Save us.
Ah, boy.
You're our only hope, Obi-Wan.
So that's that I don't. I'm going to
Professor,
go
save
back to
us.
the earlier questions and hope to make some progress, because it's I worry a lot. I
You're
worry
our
a lot
only
about
hope,
where
Obi-Wan.
we are. One thing almost everyone I know who studies the internet feels like there was a time when internet traffic had a very organic signal to it. It felt like people talking, okay? And I think a big part of the problem is we are now, that organic signal of people talking is swamped by bot traffic. Um, and let me give you some concrete examples of how this could play out. You see comments online, they say they are from, a patriotic military wife in Florida, say. And maybe that's not at all who it is. Maybe it is a 9 to 5 misinformation worker in Russia, right? Controlling that account. We and the like I was saying, the 10,000 bot accounts to amplify your opinion. If I think anything we can do to eliminate signs of bot activity, and it's a game of escalation, because any signal you look for of bot activity, they can get subtler and subtler and subtler, but it's better than nothing. And a lot of the big platforms haven't been as willing to do that because it deflates their activity numbers. For them, it's good to look like there's tons and tons and tons of activity. So, really tamping down on anything that looks like putting rate limiting, like real people. Real people only comment so many times a day. Like,
right.
If you're a real person that really wants to send like a tweet every second, every day, all day long, I'm sorry, you just can't, because we put this rate limit on it, right? Or if we see coordinated signs that these accounts are all posting in unison, you can investigate those things, and you can do takedowns, not based on content, but based on signs of it not being organic. I think that is something that is useful. I think also, I think we could really benefit from some consensus on fact checking strategies. And now that's really, really hard. There's
That'd be nice.
some kinds of facts are easier to verify than others. This is not my area of expertise, but I think if we could recognize that a lot of our problems come from not being able to agree on a set of facts, and we tried to come together and make progress on the easiest parts of that first, and did the that could be good. Yeah, I had some other thoughts.
Say that last one more time. The last idea you had.
Just investments in fact checking, really understanding that is a key part of the problem, that we don't agree on how to check facts. And it's getting harder and harder because of like the deep fakes and all this kind of stuff or whatever. But like Parler, the January 6th is an interesting example of that, right? There are people who deny the facts of January 6th.
Right.
But like speaking of Parler, this is all very relevant. There's a journalistic group, ProPublica, that did a piece, what Parler saw during the attack on the Capitol, what Parler saw. And what they did is they correlated like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of video. You can do one deep fake video, but capturing the exact same event from hundreds of different perspectives in real time, you're not going to be able to fake that.
Right.
And there were lots of people self-documenting what is going on, right? So that's a really great example of Can we just not deny those facts? Right? If
I
you were
agree.
able to capture it in real time from participants on their own, documenting it, all of these, can we just not argue about what that, like that anymore?
I agree, but I'm going to throw you a hardball question, if I may. I'm letting you know there was this thing called the fact checking by the federal government proposed under the Biden administration. It was going to be, it wasn't called the Ministry of Truth. It was fact checking or whatever. It was this woman was going to run it. The woman who was going to run it, the official fact checking federal government, we're going to start crunching back on fake news, had herself published fake news. So they were saying, oh, Hunter Biden laptop, total Russian conspiracy. That is a lie. There was nothing to that. That is not true. And they published that. She published that. She didn't check it out. She just went with it. So what faith or chance do we as Americans have when the person the federal government said was going to run our official fact checking also spread fake news and they weren't aware by the time they appointed her? Is that a good sign for us coming together as Americans to have a joint fact checking? Or does that say, wow, this may be vastly more complicated than anything we've imagined?
Well, it is vastly more complicated. I think it is. If people really underestimate that this is the source of our troubles. I don't think that the federal government doing fact checking is the way to go. We really need journalism. That fourth estate was really kind of always designed to be, something that would hold, government to account. And I think there's a lot of vilification of journalists. There's also a lot of journalists not living up to journalistic principles.
What?
There's also underfunding in journalism, right? That's another thing that the internet has done that I think is a problem, is that we are not willing to pay for high quality news in the same way. There's a lot of local papers that have closed, a lot of cutting of budgets, like of thinking, oh, you just, like everyone's posting it on the internet, that's good enough.
Right.
We have to be willing to invest in high quality journalism and holding journalism to account for its ethics and standards. And, I don't think I would not want the government to be in charge of fact checking.
Fair enough. The Journalistic Association, all the journalists in America told us there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There weren't. They lied to us. And then they go, whoops, sorry, hope you're cool with it. I mean, that's literally what they did. Then we can fast forward to, what was it? Russia Conspiracy Gate. So they said, Russia put Donald Trump in as the presidency. We have the Durham report. We have scientific studies looking at it afterwards showing, yes, Russia tried to interfere in the election, but they really only affected about 1% of the vote. And it really wasn't much to shift anything. And yet we had a lot of journalists for years not questioning that narrative at all and just pushing it forward. And it all basically turned out to be a lie. I mean, the Durham report pointed out that Hillary Clinton, this is a federal government report. Hillary Clinton kind of used campaign money, made up a lot of the stuff on Russia collusion, fed it to the FBI, and they fed it through. What chance do we have of someone being fair when this is the kind of world we live in?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the Mueller report, I think, was pretty clear that there was Russian activity. Your point about how much it matters is different. So
absolutely, the Mueller report said that they did not prove collusion. They said there was interference, but they could not prove that there was direct. Donald Trump says, "I'm going to work with the Russian government in order to bring down democracy." There was no evidence of that. Now, were the Russians involved? Sure, but that's not. The Mueller report did not prove collusion. And yet people still kept saying that for years. And now years later we go, well, that's not true. I understand he's a horrible man. Look, I don't like Trump. I'm
not saying collusion, but I do say that there's clear evidence of attempts at Russian misinformation.
Absolutely.
And that in Ukraine, way before the war is going on there, right? Here in the US. And that's another thing about how social media can make you think that there is a voice from your community participating in a conversation, and it is a voice from a very different place that has a very different agenda, then let's bring everyone together. Like if you wanted to take down a society, a good way to do it would be to pull the middle apart, get the ends to attack each other, also try to cut off the head, try to cut off any trust in leadership of any kind. And that's really what you do when you fundamentally question any kind of leadership, any kind of journalism, any kind of experts, any kind of facting. You get everyone to feel like they have to do it all themselves, and none of us are capable of doing it all ourselves. We have to rely on other people as sources of facts, other experts, and when we get to the point we don't have working infrastructure for doing that, that I think is a big part of the problem we're in.
I liked your idea if we got rid of the bots, and there was a time where, yeah, people may have been angry and arguing on the internet, but it was real people. It wasn't an exaggerated conversation. These were the conflicts humans had. And now we have these bots and they're all over the place. And yeah, it'd be great to get rid of them, but there's also a profit motive to never do that. And so maybe short of government regulation, it doesn't sound like any of these companies on their own are just going to get rid of bots. Like, why would you want to shoot yourself in the foot and take away a lot of your profit? I remember this was the debate when Musk was trying to buy Twitter. He went in and a lot of their accounts dropped when he was buying them. Like people had their account here and then their number of followers dropped here. And what they're saying, those were bots. So it's just sad to see that. Do you have any other suggestions on how we fix the country? How do we get out of this besides common fact checking and getting rid of bots, which I think are two great suggestions? Is there some way that, or could social media be a force for bringing people together? It's been a force for pulling people apart. Can it be? Is it even theoretically possible to bring people together?
I mean, some of the things I say to myself is like, I think surrounding yourself, seeking out people with differing views. I think so. What you're doing, trying to seek out differing views, is good. That's one thing I always like in leaders, like leaders that actively seek out and work with people who believe the opposite of what they do. I think that it's a lot harder. It's a lot more exhausting, to do that. But you don't make good decisions in isolation. You don't, when you put yourself in this nice, comfortable zone where everyone around you is just like high-fiving you all the time, you do not make good decisions. So that really uncomfortable, like, I got in a room and I said what I thought in front of people who think the opposite. And then you really know whether you believe what you think you believe or not, right? When you are in a little bubble, it's easy to feel like you totally understand it. And, when you have to say all of the pieces of it in a wider audience, you think, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, they had a good point about that. Hadn't really thought about it that way. That's what brings better decision making. So the more we can model that in our local and in our local environments, I think that leadership like that at every level, whether it's community, within a place of work, and all the way up to the federal government. And I'm not saying it's easy.
No, I get it. Okay, a couple tough questions. We're winding down. These are the super hard questions. I'm letting you have forewarning before them. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I like them both. I'm not gonna.
No, that's
I
not gonna
have really liked the new Star Treks, by the way. Maybe I'll just say some things I liked. I liked all the Star Wars. I liked all the Star Treks, but I've especially liked the new Star Trek movies. I thought they've been really well done.
We'll go with that. So, solid Star Trek fan is what I heard. Greatest Starfleet commander in Star Trek?
Oh, I like Picard.
I knew. Oh my God. Okay. The correct answer is Benjamin Sisko. We're gonna go to. You could. I'm proving my. Yeah. Last questions I always ask people. You're not you, You're not me. You're somebody who's watching this video and they're scared. They see social media as something tearing us apart. That's all they ever hear on TV. And they actually see this interview and somebody saying, well, it's not that social media itself is bad. It's the way that we run it. You don't have to run it that way. What? They're watching this interview. They're struggling to follow along with everything. But there's one thing that you say that they can't get out of their head when they think about how we could possibly make America get fixed and better in the future. What would be the one lasting thought you would want an average person you don't know to think of when they're thinking about how the hell do we get out of this mess?
Boy.
Sorry.
Boiling it down to one thing, that's really, really tough.
You can have two things.
Okay. Seek out conversations with people that disagree with you and try to make them as respectful and civil as you can. Disdain, mocking of other people is would be a good thing to say no to. If we need to live in this country together, if we want to be a we, mocking, disdainful language is really cutting and horrible. Try just saying, I disagree with you because. And I would say use social media like any other addictive substance, in moderation.
It's good. That's good. You don't have to, but we always ask, do you have any recommendations? Is anybody you know? They could be on the left, they could be in right, they could be in computer science, they could not, that might be interested in being part of this conversation. We're always looking for new people who might be willing to be part of an honest conversation. You don't have to, but we always ask.
Oh, I can think of tons of people who I think have amazing perspective. I would hesitate to list just one or two. Maybe you and I can communicate offline, and I'll give you some suggestions.
I appreciate that. I will email you a copy of the video. Any suggestions you have. I hope you felt that we did a fair job. We weren't trying to do gotcha journalism.
No, I didn't feel like that at all.
Yeah, we'd like to keep the conversation going. Again, they could be on the left, they could be on the right. We just want them to be thoughtful. And then we'll just get the information out to the public. I'll email you about that shortly. That concludes our time. I want to say thank you, Professor. Really appreciate you being out here. And thanks for being honest. I could tell you were genuinely genuine. More genuine than a lot of our guests.
I enjoyed this conversation a lot, and thank you for digging into this problem from so many different angles. It is a multifaceted beast, and I think you are really trying to do justice to it and get to some solutions. I appreciate that.
All right, I'm not going to cry on camera, so we're going to have to end this show. We'll leave it there. I will email you shortly, Professor. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Bye. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th.